Good morning. Good morning, special people, because you truly are. You represent the best, the best of our work in education. You're the most closest to our scholars, or as I refer to them as our queens and kings. Um, so my name is Jerome Gordine. Currently, I'm the Director of Targeted Strategies for the Office of Equity. Prior to that role, I was Director of African American Male Achievement. And prior to that role, I was Principal of Frick and moved through the ranks, from teacher to assistant principal to principal. And had the pleasure of being at Frick for 20 years. And then moving into these other roles in the central department the last 6 to 8 years. Mary?
Hi everyone, I'm a high school math specialist. So I work for the central office and get to work with high school math teachers around the district and kind of join in PLCs as much as possible, and excited to roll out new curriculum for next year.
And so the panelists, we would like for you to introduce yourself with your name, your site, and maybe 1 to 3 words that describe what your distance learning experience has been like. Who would like to go first?
Jamal Muhammad, African American Male Achievement Facilitator, Skyline High School. Good morning again, everybody. 1 to 3 words describing distance learning experience: challenging, yet I'm going to say transformative, or in the process of transforming. I know that's more than 1 word, but the challenges are forcing me to grow. So, growth inducing.
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad. Who's next?
I can go next. Hi, everybody. My name is Eva Ng. I teach 9th grade biology, 11th grade physiology, and senior advisory at Fremont High School. And I came up with a phrase to describe my distance learning experience. My phrase is empty office hours.
Oh, wow. You gotta. Catherine, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Kate Coleman. I'm the co-director of the Race Law Academy at Oakland Technical High School. And Jerome came and did one of my racial affinity groups in the fall, which was great.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was so much fun. And my pronouns are she, her. And I would say my 3 words for distance learning have been fast-paced, inspiring, and frustrating.
Thank you. And by the way, my pronouns are he, him. Who wants to go next?
I can go next.
Right,
I'm Shane Durkin at Skyline High School. I've been teaching math there for 7 years, and this year I'm transitioning to the math coaching role. I would say a few words to describe my distance learning experience is an emotional, optimistic roller coaster.
Thank you. That's 3 words. You did a great job. Nina, you want to go next?
Sure. Nina Portugal, she, her. I'm a 9th grade humanities teacher at Life Academy. And Shane took one of my words, but I had roller coaster, reflective, and experimental during this time.
Thank you. Experimental. And last but not least, by no stretch of imagination, Ms. Laura. You gotta go. You were on mute.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm at Skyline. I'm the newcomer ELD teacher there. And 3 words to describe distance learning. Hard on the eyes. Let's say hard on the eyes.
Thank you for that. Just a reminder for people tuning in, not on the panel, we will be having the open forum section at the end of the panel. Please type in any questions that are coming up for you in the chat box, and we'll hold them for the open forum. Please also use the chat feature to comment or agree with panelists. So moving into reflecting on your own learning, as we sent the questions out to our panelists, and you chose which ones you would like to answer. So as I go through this list, I see who's put their names down by initials, and I'll ask you. But we do not expect everyone to answer every question. Okay? So the first question: what have you enjoyed most about being an educator during distance learning? Shane?
Yeah, I can start. Some people have already spoken to it with their 3 words to describe distance learning, but the ability to experiment with different ways of reaching students using different platforms. I think the first couple of weeks I felt really overwhelmed with a bunch of different platforms that were emailing me saying, you can try our stuff for free, here's free. So after the week or 2 of digging through what was gonna work and what wasn't gonna work and playing around with the different forms, it was really exciting to have new tools to engage students and to assess mastery. I think moving forward, I'm looking at how do I spiral that in to when we come back to in-person learning.
Okay.
And I'll leave it there.
All right, thank you. Eva?
Yeah, definitely feeling a lot of what Shane just said. One of the things I do enjoy was just learning all those new online tools. As he said, I just want to echo that. It was really overwhelming at first, but I do feel like it allowed me to activate a different part of my brain that doesn't maybe get worked as hard during the year in person. It really forced me to be innovative and think about what are the best ways to deliver content. It made me take a second look at my content, what are the pieces of fat that I can cut out, and how can I deliver this in a really simple, straightforward way. Something else I really enjoyed about being an educator is just the massive amount of collaboration and shared thinking that came out of this. I really want to lift up Fremont's science team. We've been super collaborative and sharing tools and best practices, showing each other, hey, I used Edpuzzle for this, or I used Pear Deck for this. And actually me and my other biology 9th grade teachers have been co-creating curriculum and lessons. And so being able to see how they do it and assign it to my students, it's been a huge load off of me as well. And so just the collaboration, there's just a lot of communication going on.
Yeah, thank you for the piece about the collaboration, and Shane talking about, as you did, about just going through the different tools and finding out what's most useful to you. Nina, you have a piece you want to do this, please?
Yeah, I echo, I wrote down learning new skills has been high on the list. I think often those tech tricks during the year, I'm but I can just do it in person. And I put them off because to me, it takes more time in my planning, but learning how to screencast, I'm wow, this actually saves a lot of time. And so those new skills and having time to experiment. And then similar with Eva, I actually did some integrated projects during this time with coworkers of other disciplines. So our students didn't have to be going to so many Google Classrooms, and it's easy to silo yourself all the time. And I think this really lifted up the fact that silos don't work and we have to be in it together. And then the last thing I've enjoyed the most is the ability to differentiate in a really real way for my kids. It's super hard in a big class, and with the distance learning, to text or remind message or make special videos, and you can post on Google Classroom different assignments to certain students, the ability to reach out to students who maybe weren't successful prior, but have had a lot of success now. Those learnings, I think, are the best and surprising, and then getting to dig into why this time has been more successful for those certain young folk, and how we can take that through for the rest of their educational journey has been really, really great for me.
Oh, thank you. Mary, we have 12 minutes. So for our next set of questions, it's really the same 3 people. And somebody want to add, I think we have some time. What have you learned from this experience? What structures, resources, tools did you find most successful? So we'll start with Nina this time.
Sure. I mean, I kind of mentioned like screencast. It's been like so helpful. It's amazing. I think Zoom has been decently helpful. I've been doing a lot of one-on-one writing conferences with my students and getting them onto calls one at a time and sharing screens of their writing and going through things with them in ways that I could never have done in the classroom. That had a really amazing structure that I've really loved. I'm trying to think what else I wrote down.
What's screencast?
Yeah. Screencast is your ability to record a screen with you speaking over it. So if you had PowerPoint slides or a lecture, you're recording it and showing the screen or how to post something. That has been really, really great. So that's just from tools. And then I think just in terms of learnings, modes of production and like giving kids different opportunities to produce their work in all different ways that use different technology, lifting up art more, like the creativity. I think when kids are in front of screens, lifting up that creativity has been really, really important. Holding class meetings, to Eva's point, we scratched office hours on my team because no one showed up. But then we called them class meetings. And then they all showed up. And like what just naming something is, right? Sending out a Cal invite and be like, come to the meeting. And we would play some fun games, do little reminders, real quick 5 minutes of learning. And then all of a sudden kids were there. So, all those little tricks of the trade have been huge learnings during this time.
Thank you. Eva?
Yeah.
That's great. I'm definitely gonna steal that class.
That's exactly what we want you to do. Like steal like you never stole before.
Yes. Yeah, definitely to echo Nina, I have been doing a lot of Screencastify since we aren't doing, or I'm personally not doing so much synchronous learning, just recording myself going through the process of doing something and then uploading it so kids can watch it on their own time. I do want to list a couple other tools that I have found really successful and user-friendly and high in student engagement. I've been, apart from Google Classroom and the general Google Suite, I've been using Pear Deck, which is like a Google Slides add-on. Edpuzzle, which is like a way to annotate videos and keep kids accountable. And Edpuzzle is great because it also automatically grades for you if you make it multiple choice. And a little bit of Padlet, so students can see that other students are actually engaging as well, because I do feel like that increases engagement when they see their peers participating. And so those are just the tools that I found most useful. And something I learned early on in this situation was from a webinar that was offered through Mills, and one of the principles of like online learning was to be intrusive, like really put yourself out there. As a teacher, you'll get rejected by a lot of your students. They won't pick up their phones, but like if you want your engagement to increase and if you want students to be learning, like really intrude into their lives through phone calls, texts. And I'm not really someone that, like puts my Instagram or all my personal information out there for students usually, but I found in this era, like I really have to take that first step so students can access me and I can access students at the same time.
Yeah, I just appreciate that concept of being intrusive and that slick strategy of using that one tool where the other students can see each other, which I do agree creates a lot more motivation. So thank you for those pieces. Shane?
Yeah, a lot of what's already been said. Edpuzzle has been a lifesaver. I've played around with Screencastify as well as another software called OBS, which is very similar. It's a little more powerful and takes a little bit longer to learn. Like I'm still not fully there yet. But I would say one of the biggest helpful learning tools has been talking points. which is a way for me to send, it's kind of like a remind where you can mass message people, but it translates for you, which has been super helpful. And then just leaning on collaboration, whether it's collaboration with my content team to make sure that we are sharing best practices, or with the district. The math team has been really fortunate to have a lot of math collaboration across the district, which has helped us kind of early on figure out what are the best resources to use. And lastly, I think I learned it's super important to bring discussion into your lessons during distance learning, because I think that's the key piece that we miss from watching an Edpuzzle video or watching a YouTube video, is the ability for students to make sense of what they're seeing in real time with other people, whether it's commenting back and forth on a Google Classroom, whether it's using breakout groups, whether it's having students call, text, email, WhatsApp, whatever it is, just to make sure that they're making sense of their learning with someone other than themselves or the teacher.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So yeah, this is a great medium now for discussion, to get to know the students at a different level, and then, like you said, the talking point. So thank you guys for all the different tools and resources you shared. So with that said, we're right on time, Mary. So we should move to engage in community for 10 minutes. And the first question is, what have you heard from parents about how distant learning went or is going? And Jamal, you first up.
For the parents that I'm hearing back, that I've been in communication with, distance learning has not gone well for them. And I don't think that's due to any fault of anybody. Like, I'm listening to these amazing educators here, and I know that teachers and educators are trying to do the best that we can to create a vibrant form of distance learning. I just think that because of the way that it was just heaped on us, obviously circumstances beyond our control, many of us, I know I wasn't ready. We didn't have time to prepare our kings and queens, and to even roll out to accommodate the resource divide in terms of technology. Like, how many families did we lose contact with because they didn't have reliable devices or reliable Wi-Fi, or students that, and all of these concerns I'm sure everyone is aware of now. Like, even a quiet space where one of our kings or queens could log in and access our lesson. So a lot of parents express frustration with distance learning, feeling even more disconnected from school sites than they would have, even traditionally disconnected. So I mean, just not feeling like, just feeling invalidated in a lot of ways, feeling disconnected, and a sense of frustration from a lot of the parents that I spoke with. Now, hopefully, as we've gotten better, like, maybe that conversation is different now. But I know initially, and even up until recently, there's a sense of, being disconnected, feeling left out, feeling frustrated, and not being able to keep up with everything.
Well, thank you. Catherine, I see you nodding your head, so I want to bring you in to that question. What have you heard?
Sure. So I think a lot of the parents that I've been in contact with are feeling very, very similarly to all of the ways that you just described, Jamal. One thing that a lot of them have expressed appreciation for is I was doing my own weekly email to all of my parents. And so Aries has this really great tool where you can go into Teacher Miscellaneous and you can choose email all. And you can email all of the parents or all of the students, and it BCCs all of them. It makes it super easy. So shout out to Steve Wright from Oakland Tech for teaching me that. But a lot of them are just really grateful for that, because I think in the same way that people mentioned feeling really overwhelmed by the just sheer number of resources being shared with educators, parents were feeling really overwhelmed with the sheer amount of information they were expected to process. And then the fact that it was also constantly changing, because like the situation is constantly changing. And so once a week, I was just emailing out on Mondays, like a really simple breakdown of things that I thought were most relevant to them and their students, kind of collected from like various communications at our school site, and also providing parents with links to what their students were expected to do for the week, my personal contact information if they needed to ask me a question. And so I think that kind of in the way that I think, Eva, you were the person who said, like, be intrusive to our students. Like, I think a lot of parents also needed that too, where it was just like going this like one extra step, so that instead of having to read like 5 newsletters or have to follow 8 accounts on Instagram or whatever, they were getting their information once a week in their inbox, super concise, and they had one contact point. And like, I was really open about like, I have no idea what the answers are, but like, I can try and figure out who might know. And so also owning that, like, you know, there were no answers most of the time and everything was going to change tomorrow, and appreciating them for their patience in that.
Okay, well, thank you. Next question, what have you heard from students? So, Catherine.
Cool. I've been kind of hearing things along 2 themes. First, like, students are just really stressed out. I think that it's hard to measure impact, but I would argue that teenagers are probably going to be the worst impacted by the pandemic, simply because they're old enough to know what's going on and they're young enough to feel completely powerless. And so a lot of them are manifesting stress and anxiety in ways that maybe are typical for them, but really exacerbated right now, or like in new ways. Like, so many of my students are just nocturnal now. And so like, they're really stressed out. And so I think a lot of them are feeling that stress from not only the pandemic, of the inequitable ways it's impacting different student populations, but also there's this sudden complete lack of structure. Yeah, I agree. 2 a.m. student emails.
Right.
Yeah, my husband's students send him like TikToks at 3 a.m. and I'm like, this needs to stop. But yeah, it's like they're also like, their daily lives, like, there's nothing left for them. Like, even though like school structure wasn't working for many of our students in the way that it typically, you know, you have 50 minutes in each class, you have to be there at 8 or 8:30. That's really hard for them, but it also was a structure, and there's suddenly nothing. And so I think this has revealed a real need for emphasis around ownership around student academic identity, and the ways in which they're starting to develop those really important skills for when you leave high school, and you leave all of the support systems. Because as important as those are, it's more important that we're preparing our students to find those systems for themselves and build them in ways that work for them.
Thank you. Jamal?
Just in alignment with everything Catherine was saying, and maybe even, I thought I might have been mute, but just like a sense, especially at the beginning, a sense of like, at first there's this, oh, we don't have school, oh, everything is cool, right? Went the first week or so, and then as this has continued, a sense of like, I don't know what I should be doing. I got 5 class meetings scheduled at the same time, and they like jumping back and forth between Zoom, Google Classroom. So a sense of confusion, and just like for the seniors, is like the seniors I've been able to work with. There's just like some of them are working, some of them have picked up jobs during this, and this was another interesting. At least 3 of the students I have work either a grocery store or like and so it's interesting that like that at this age they're now essential workers. This is their first foray into the job market. So they're balancing that, helping families, as well as trying to meet their graduation obligations and the changing capstone requirements and what is expected of them. So a lot of confusion.
Okay.
And growth, and some of them have had to grow and start to develop their own, like building their own advocacy networks. And so, just confusion and lastly, because I'm thinking about the seniors now, a sense of like being deprived of one of the important rites of passages in our culture.
Yeah.
This walking, like just being deprived of that.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
I'm referencing seniors because that's at the top of my head now.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, thank you.
uh,
Thank you. One last question within this section, and we're about a minute, and it's going to go to Nina. How did you continue nurturing, building community with students while distance?
Yeah. I mean, I think, relationships are key. And I'll say at first, I didn't quite know how. I was lucky. I attended something with Mills Teacher Scholars, and there was a bunch of elementary school teachers. And we asked ourselves this question, and it came back to, well, what do we do normally to build relationships, right? What do we do in August when we first meet students? And like reminding the tools that we already have. And so for me during this time, those class meetings have been the biggest, right? How can I give space for my students to check in and answer silly questions? How can I give space to do a mood meter for them? How can I give space? Like something I've done a lot is I've been recording videos every week of myself saying, how are you? Here's something I maybe cooked this week, show them a picture, like be vulnerable myself, which is something I did all year. It's really easy to forget to do when all of a sudden there's a pandemic, right? And so those were the spaces. And then Shane brought up talking points. I'm a huge fan of Remind. And I think that's a great interface, and like just continuing just to reach out to kids. Like Eva said, like that intrusion, like, how are you? I haven't heard from you. As well as shouting out student work. So like I've been compiling like little snippets of best work and showing that at the start of the week, the next week for students. So there's that culture of appreciation and learning and collaboration has been really big, I think, for building and nurturing community, and just like remembering what we did can still be done. It just looks a little bit different. And to Catherine's point, like our students crave it so much right now.
Thank
And
you.
create one another and us in the structure.
Thank you so much. And with that, I turn it over to Mary. We kind of switch roles. Where are you, Mary?
I'm over here. All right.
Oh, you're right in the middle.
First, like panelists, like thank you so much. It's really great to be able to hear all the things that you're trying and learning, just like being on the front lines there and having to figure things out. So really appreciate you reflecting on this crazy time. And now we're going to kind of shift gears into thinking ahead. So we just spent some time thinking about what we've learned. Now we're going to think about next year and beyond. And I also want to remind people that aren't on the panel, if you have questions coming up, please put them in the chat box. After this section, we're going to have an open forum, and I'm going to kind of pull questions from there. So if there's something we're not talking about that you're curious about, please put it in the chat box. Okay. So thinking about next year, we don't know yet kind of the structure, what that will look like, and if we'll be distanced or not, or some sort of hybrid. But what are you going to take away from this and apply it to next year when we're not distanced? So if we're just like thinking about when it's just back to school as normal, if that's possible, what do you want to bring with you? And I'm going to start with Shane.
Yeah, it's an interesting question right now because I'm not sure when normal comes back. So I'm trying to also plan for what does not normal look like starting the school year. But assuming things are eventually getting back to normal, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but I'm just thinking of what resources that helped me build relationships, engage students, and assess learning. What tools am I using now that I can carry into the classroom? And I'm starting to notice a little bit of time that I used in the classroom that can maybe be done at home or before students come in to maximize the real in-person learning. I'm also hearing a lot from my students that maybe weren't as engaged in class are now becoming a little bit more engaged because they have kind of the flexibility to work when they want. So I'm thinking without, over planning and working till 2 a.m., I'm thinking about what kind of structures can I build in my classroom to support both kind of learners, and how do I use the resources that I'm experimenting with now to support that work.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, you can. Okay. It still says I'm mute. I guess my screen is just frozen.
The screen is frozen. We can hear you.
Okay, great. So Eva, I'm gonna turn it to you then, like same question, like what are you hoping to apply next year?
Yeah, on like the more like, this is something that me and the coworker were already planning on doing. We were planning on developing some sort of credit recovery curriculum to use next year that our students can do, especially like our seniors and our juniors can do if they have that like 7th period free for like a 6-week cycle. That's something that's built into our master schedule already because of like scheduling credentialing differences. None of the life science teachers can hold that right now. And so building that life science credit recovery curriculum for students to be able to use sort of like as a distance learning. And I just feel like a lot more confident developing that curriculum now that I've had a chance to really try. Am I frozen? Okay. Okay. I've had a chance to really try and use all those tools and like be forced to get familiar with those tools and their extensive capabilities. I feel much more confident diving into developing that.
Yeah, I'm sure we can all relate to that we've got a little bit of practice and now we can kind of sort out what we want to keep using. Catherine, anything to add on?
Yeah, this is. Anybody else hear that echo? No. Okay. All right. So this is more broad. This isn't necessarily to my own practice, but I think just the biggest takeaway is that like there's not necessarily a way to be a teacher anymore and to not be a technical person. And so I think that's really important for teacher preparations to consider, preparation programs to consider, and also district and school sites, and how to support people at the level that they're at. I've really loved all of the different trainings that OUSD has been offering. And so thinking about how to like set up people and like really work one-on-one with teachers the way that we know like students are best worked with one-on-one, and individualized instruction for our teachers in terms of professional development so that our teachers can be serving our students in the best ways.
Thank you. And I'm actually gonna jump in, like skip the next question and come back to it because I think this is a good transition into thinking like in an ideal world, what sort of support would you like from central office? I mean, Catherine just named, continuing these webinars to train teachers on how to use new tools that we're suddenly being expected to use, but what other support would be helpful? And I'm gonna pass it to Eva.
Yeah, just thinking about all the tools that we've been using during distance learning, like for me, like Pear Deck, Edpuzzle, Padlet, like other tools that other people, Flipgrid, I know it's free, but some of the other tools we've been using, they've been offered to educators during this pandemic as premium, like free trials, and those free trials are going to disappear sometime over the summer. And in order to use those tools to the best of our capability, especially if we will still be in a hybrid model in the fall, I would love funding from central office for the premium version of those tools so I can continue using them next year.
Thank you. And Catherine, do you want to add anything on?
Yeah, this is actually kind of relevant to Eva's comment about funding. I I guess I would love more emphasis in district communications to teachers and community members on what sort of advocacy work the district is doing at the state and federal level to reduce financial cutbacks. I think that I know that work is going on, but I don't feel that I know what that work looks like. And I think that it's a really good opportunity to get the community involved, to build positive ties with the union. But I think everyone's feeling really scared about the way that our budgets are going to be cut inevitably. And so more transparency and emphasis around the advocacy work that the district is doing to combat those cutbacks would be, it would just make me feel better just to see what's going on.
I appreciate you naming like how transparency could build, unity between everyone across the district. And now I'm curious about like what was missing for you during distance learning that we should all be doing some thinking around. And Jamal, let's start with you.
Gotta remember to unmute the human connection, which is something that is, I mean, we all know this is probably cliche or whatever, but there is impossible to replicate the connection that's built in classrooms when there's a conscientious and consistent effort to nurture and develop relationships, to being able to read body language, to be able to see when a king or queen may need a little help or when they got it and you don't need to do anything but just be like encouraging. So just that human connection, the ability to feel the energy of a campus, to feel the energy of a classroom, no matter how good the tech is, it can't replace that. So, I mean, for me, that's the biggest thing that's missing, that real human connection. Like, there's so many of the kings that I never got to see. Maybe they didn't join the Zoom, or they might have done assignments, but not, like I didn't get to have that, like, hey, how are you feeling today? What's going on in your world? Like, how can I be supportive of you? That was the thing that I missed the most, just that humanity. Oh, did I answer it? so I guess, to build it, to extend on it, if there's some way within, whether we're on a hybrid, because I don't know what school's going to look like when we come back, but if there's some way to increase if there's some way to, as much as possible, replicate that human connectivity as we go forward. I know phone calls are, to me, feel more personal than a Zoom class. So how do we work around that, considering that if we go back to school and fall in the physical space, what happens if we then, unfortunately, there's another outbreak and we have to go back to how can we accelerate those human connections, or how could we plan within that? And I don't know if there is an answer, and maybe that's nothing we can ever do, but how can we how could we try to factor in that loss as we go forward?
I think maybe Mary's not able.
Mary, are you there?
She might not be able to answer right now.
Okay. For the next question, for that same question, what is missing for you during distance learning, and what we need to think collectively to do some thinking around? Catherine, could you offer what's missing?
I was actually going to say the same thing as Jamal. I miss my students so much. And I love teaching because of my students and my classroom community. And, I know that this is not ideal circumstances for anyone right now, but maybe just thinking about the ways that teachers are having to support themselves right now, to suddenly not have that interpersonal connection that we've been able to have all year. Yeah, it's just been really hard. I miss them a lot. And like, I can do this job by doing screencasts and phone calls and stuff, but yeah, I just
Yeah.
miss my kids.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you guys are in the roles you're in. And if you didn't feel that way, you shouldn't do it. How has distance learning impacted what you're thinking about for the summer, Shane?
So a lot of anxiety around the uncertainty. I met with our ILT and FC on Tuesday just to discuss different possibilities. And because there is a lot of uncertainty, we're just trying to plan for everything, which feels overwhelming. But I'm trying to think of ways to plan for the school year that will support most scenarios. So thinking about getting a head start on some of my Edpuzzle or YouTube videos that I can use regardless if we are in or out of class. I'm thinking about, as I'm coaching next year, what are the ways I can support distance coaching, especially for some of our teachers that, you know, didn't investigate the tech as much as some of our other teachers. And then I'm also thinking about how important it is to keep content teams really consistent on the same pacing guide. At Skyline, we are pretty fortunate to have most of our ninth grade like on the same pacing guide. So thinking about how we can explore that further so that if a student can't make a certain teacher's class, like a physics class, maybe they can jump into another physics class and get that same type of instruction. Because moving forward, everyone's schedule is going to be a little bit different. And depending on what the MOU looks like, I think it's important to keep teachers on the same pace so that planning is easier, and then that students have a little bit more flexibility to attend certain classes.
And Eva, how about you?
Yeah, for me, mine is really like a personal goal in terms of thinking about the summer. Even if we are in a hybrid model in the fall or maybe more distance learning, I mean, this has really emphasized the impact that communicating with families has on student engagement. And it just seems like communicating with families is really an essential part of distance learning. And so because of that, like calling my Spanish-speaking families has been really difficult for me in communicating with them. I've pretty much mastered 2 phrases, which is, "Hi, I'm your student science teacher at Fremont, and is your student home?" so they can translate for us. And I would love to be able to speak more freely to Spanish-speaking parents. So for me personally, I'm planning on taking a Spanish class in the summer just to refresh my memory of what I took in high school.
All right. And Nina, for your summer?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I didn't put my name on this one.
No, you didn't, but I saw you nod your head
yeah,
up.
I mean, I think the summer, like similar to what a lot of people said, is I think for me, it's taking time to reflect. Like, what did I learn? What worked? Giving myself the time and the space to think about that. And with my colleagues, I've been really proud of my grade level team. We've actually been doing like public learning where like every week one of us brings a dilemma to our meetings and we like help each other think it through and then like share out about a change. And we're like trying to see this as like a professionalizing time and how can we support each other in the summer to recognize a system that we knew was broken has been demolished, right? And we get to like reinvent and rethink it through using what we know is best for ourselves, kids, and families. And that's exciting. So I'm excited to really get time to just like think this summer with a little less trauma, right? Like it's just a little, maybe a little bit less.
Oh, thank you. That's fantastic. Mary's back. And
sorry about that. One of the many technical problems that I'm sure we've all experienced during this time.
Open forum, Mary.
Well, okay, so one of the problems with Zoom is when you have to restart, you lose the whole chat box. So questions were coming up in the chat. I no longer have them. I do remember that there was one around like tips to help lower the stakes for students, to engage with Flipgrid, and then a second around what trainings would be most helpful for teachers at your site. So does anyone want to speak quickly to Flipgrid and how you can help lower the stakes for students?
I can talk a little bit about that. I mean, I think it was easier in the spring because we had built relationships in the fall. Like, I want to acknowledge that. Like, I think it will be different come August with new students, but I think lowering stakes, like modeling, right? Like, I made my own silly video. I think it's leveraging those relationships to get certain students to post their videos first, and then also providing lots of opportunities, like allowing videos of ceilings, videos of kids' hands. They allow you to put emojis. Some of my kids got creative and like made avatars of themselves and somehow uploaded that. It's like amazing what kids figure out how to do. So I think, again, like allowing for multiple mediums of production is really key. As well as like asking your students. Like, one of the ways I moved to the meetings was I was asking students why office hours weren't working, right? And so like being really open with kids, like I think we do in the classroom. Like, we give surveys and we give feedback after units and projects, and like doing that just more regularly, I think allows for greater buy-in and activity, right? When you say, you all said you wanted this, so I'm going to try this, you tend to get a little bit more. So that's kind of my little tips.
Nina, does Flipgrid integrate with Google Classroom?
It integrates with Remind. So I could post on Google Classroom, but I had it as a separate link. I'm not 100%, but they can record videos back to one another. So it becomes like a discussion thread. Yeah. So it's very like Instagram-y and that kind of stuff. It looks very kid friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to get back to something Catherine said, like, because we, work central office capacity, but, know how important it is for you and your colleagues to feel completely supported. What type of document would create the transparency you needed to know what the district was trying to do with the current budget? Like, for example, I've learned to like really pay attention to the board meetings and listen primarily to that chief business and financial officer. I know tonight they have a budget and finance subcommittee meeting. I don't want you guys to go to that because I want you to go to African American Honor Roll, which I'll plug in a minute. At 6. But like, what type of document would you need from the district to fill, to get a sense of what the advocacy that Dr. Dr. Tramel's doing and Curtis Siricki, senior leadership team, Preston, that they're doing? What would you need?
Are you asking just me or all of the educators here?
I'm asking all the educators, but in particular, start with you because you brought it up, and I just got a lot of respect for that.
Thank you. I think I really like Dr. Tramel's weekly updates, and I think that if there was a specific section around the work that the district was doing to communicate with federal and state legislators around funding, that would be really helpful. I also think that it's not necessarily even a document, but also potentially like opportunities for people to be involved. I feel like I get a lot of communications from the union on like, hey, call Congress and make sure that they pass funding and, make sure that we are working to, get these billions of dollars into California education. And I don't really feel like I get that from the district. I feel like educators, but also students and parents have a lot to say about the needs of specific programs and on the chopping block, like RJ, AMA, things. And so I feel like if there was to be work done at the state or federal level, like these are voices that would be really helpful to be involved. And from my perspective, most applications I get about advocacy work for protesting budget cuts comes from the union instead of coming from the district. So the district was going to be with the congressperson from, you know, oh, sorry, my internet's going out maybe. So, but
No,
if the, okay. But so if the district is meeting with a congressperson or a state representative, is there a way for teachers to be involved with that? Is there a way for students to be involved with that? Because right now I feel like all of that advocacy work I hear is from the union end, and I don't feel like I hear it from the district end. And I don't think that's because it's not happening. I know it's happening. I just never hear about it. And so that would be a way, not only just like documents to be like, hey, here's a quick update of like the kinds of communication we're doing to prevent budget cuts. Because I think the difference between like the chief business officer saying like, here's our new budget, and somebody saying, and here's the work that we're doing to try and make that better. But also like ways to be involved from the community end. Because yeah, that I think would give me a sense of like, I did everything I possibly could to try and save my student support specialist or something like that.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add to that, or do you have your own questions? That's fine.
I think I might add one thing there. I feel like, I've been in OUSD for a while, and it seems like, even this offering, often teachers get emails from someone at district office who invites them to be on something. But not very often, I can't really think in my time, spaces where it's like an all call and teachers get to kind of step up on their own. And like when I hear Catherine talk about some of this activism pieces, like what would an all call look like and who would step up, right? Or even a panel like this, if an all call was made, what teachers would have stepped up and what different voices maybe are we not hearing because they don't have a connection with someone at Central. And how do we build those connections for everyone to be heard? Because I just like, this district is just full of phenomenal educators, like all on the ground hustling really hard right now. And I just think, there's a power in inviting everyone to the table.
No, thank you for that. I know we're doing some surveys, but this is even more. Yeah, I will definitely be bringing this back to those that I think can have some influence on making that happen. So thank you so much. Mary?
Yes, we don't have a lot of time left, but looking at the chat, there's another question around what trainings would be most helpful for teachers at your site. I know a couple people mentioned that some of the webinars were really helpful during this time. And so if we think about like, what additional trainings would be needed.
I think if we are starting in the fall as distance learning, a training around facilitating a virtual class meeting instead of office hours, but like a virtual class meeting. So if my students are all coming to me, 32 of them from 9 to 10, like what are some tips I can use to facilitate that time in a meaningful way instead of just having kids come, I speak at them, and then they like pop questions in the chat. Like I know breakout groups are great, but some sort of training around that would be super helpful.
Yeah, I think similarly, there has been online learning prior to this pandemic, and I would love to hear from educators who are already in this space having a lot of success. There's tons who teach, overseas or internationally, and college classes, our community college system, like who at Laney and Merritt that are already our partners have expertise. I would personally love to learn from some of those people.
Yeah. Additional comments? It's always like a little bit difficult to practice wait time on Zoom.
Well, Jamal just said more tech training, specifically for me, privacy concerns around tech we might use.
Yeah, I mean, I looked up, Google Classroom now has a start meeting feature, right? And it's like, and I'm fully aware we're going to need to use technology, and I fully embrace it. I want to learn as much as I can, but I also do want to be mindful around privacy and data gathering and how that may or may not be used within as much as we can control, right? And also, like, you know, like I use Prezi, but if I'm hearing Flipgrid, like, so training on like by now what's proven to be effective, so that we're not chasing the latest hottest app. You know, say like what's effective, what's dynamic, and let's get trained on those things.
Okay, so as we close out, Mary.
Yeah, so we're gonna shift into some closing. I just really want to thank all the panelists on here for sharing what you're learning and thinking about, as well as everyone else for tuning in. I mean, Nina said it, like this district is full of really wonderful educators that are trying their best and learning as we go. And so thank you for representing them today. And I'm gonna invite you to say 1 to 3 words that describe what you're excited about heading into next year. So I'm gonna just be calling on you, and I'm gonna start with Eva.
All right. I teach 9th grade, so I am very excited for our new 9th graders, as I am every year, and I'm just really curious as to what their middle school experience has been like, because I know middle school distance learning probably has been a little different than high school distance learning, and how they are going to embrace the transition to high school in this hybrid distance learning era.
Thank you. And for non-panelists, like feel free to share an appreciation in the chat box for someone or something during this space. And I'm going to turn it to Shane, 1 to 3 words that you're excited about.
New math curriculum in Oakland.
Yes.
Really excited about that.
What about you, Jamal?
Connecting and building with the kings and queens again.
And Nina?
Continuing to learn and grow.
And Catherine, close us out.
New professional challenges.
Great. I love that, ending with this optimism. So thank you all, and share an appreciation in the chat box if you'd like.
Wait, like I said,
Yes, Jerome's plug.
Tonight, 6 to 7, the 19th annual African American Honor Roll celebration, 8th to 12th grade, right? The first virtual. We put a lot of work into it, you guys, like the last couple weeks. Please, it's extraordinary. And it's straight up Oakland. It's straight up the town, like, and every bit. Y'all gonna love it. Please tune in 6 to 7. This is historical. I'm speechless. But please, 6 to 7, Office Equity, YouTube, Facebook. But we've been sending the flyers out. All the families know. All the kings and queens know. We've gotten over like 5,000 emails. I mean, so it's gonna be something. It was pre-recorded, but we got some tech alumni in there that got some special words. Man, I can't tell you, and I'm from the bottom of my heart, man. You guys are absolutely awesome. You're doing the most important work at all the different levels per se. I'm speaking not just for myself, but I'm sure our superintendent would say the same. And really appreciate what you provided us today. And I'm going to follow through, Queens, Kate and Nina, on what you said. So you're going to hear something. I assure you that, one way or the other. So, and I know that benefit all. So just thank you so much for just being you and doing the work you're doing. And that's where all our panelists, and our other special educators that have joined in on this conversation. Thank you all.